Mandela and the Rugby Revolution. Unity through sports. In 1994, South Africa stood at a crossroads. Apartheid had ended, Nelson Mandela had been elected president, and the nation had a chance to step into a new era. But beneath the celebrations, deep wounds remained. Decades of racial segregation had left mistrust between black and white South Africans, and the idea of true unity seemed distant, almost impossible. Mandela understood that political change alone was not enough. Healing a divided nation required something deeper, something that could reach people's hearts, not just their minds. And in 1995, he found the unexpected key: rugby. For much of the country's history, rugby was a symbol of white Afrikaner pride. The Springboks, South Africa's national rugby team, were adored by white fans, but despised by most black South Africans who saw the team as a representation of the apartheid regime. During Mandela's 27 years in prison, he had every reason to resent this sport. Yet, as president, he saw an opportunity where others saw only division. The 1995 Rugby World Cup was set to be hosted in South Africa. Mandela realized it could become a stage not for competition alone, but for reconciliation. In the months leading up to the tournament, Mandela made a bold move. Instead of distancing himself from the Springboks, he embraced them. He met with team captain Francois Pienaar, a tall, determined man who understood the weight of what they were trying to achieve. But Mandela's conviction was unwavering. He believed that if the Springboks could capture the nation's imagination, they could also change its heart. Mandela began wearing the green and gold jersey of the Springboks, a sight that stunned many. For black South Africans, it was confusing. Why would their leader adopt a symbol of the old regime? But Mandela's strategy was simple. If he could forgive, others might follow. He attended matches, shook hands with players, and encouraged his supporters to cheer for the team. Slowly, the walls between the sport and the broader public began to crumble. The Rugby World Cup kicked off in June 1995, and the Springboks were not the favorites. Teams like New Zealand's All Blacks were expected to dominate. But with every game, South Africa fought harder, playing with a spirit that went beyond winning. It was about proving that they could stand as one nation. Each victory brought the country closer together. Stadiums once filled with only white fans began to see a more diverse crowd. Flags waved, songs were sung, and for the first time, the green and gold became a shared symbol. The final match took place on June 24, 1995, in Johannesburg. The Springboks faced the All Blacks in what many believed would be an impossible challenge. The tension was electric, but just before the match, something extraordinary happened. Nelson Mandela walked onto the field wearing the Springbok jersey and cap, both emblazoned with the number 6, Francois' number. The stadium erupted. White fans, many of whom had never considered Mandela their president, stood and cheered. Black South Africans, seeing Mandela embrace a symbol of unity, felt an undeniable shift. The game itself was fierce. Both teams fought with everything they had, but in the end, the Springboks triumphed, winning 15-12 in extra time. As the final whistle blew, the stadium roared not just for the victory, but for what it represented. When Pienaar accepted the Webb Ellis Cup from Mandela, the moment became immortal. Pienaar later said, "We didn't just have 60,000 South Africans there that day, we had 43 million. The 1995 Rugby World Cup didn't erase the past, but it proved that unity was possible. It showed that symbols could be redefined, and that even the deepest divisions could be challenged with courage, empathy, and vision. Mandela understood that sports could transcend politics, speaking to people in a language of passion, pride, and hope. In the years that followed, the image of Mandela in that green jersey remained one of the most iconic moments in sports history. It wasn't about rugby alone. It was about using a moment in time to inspire change. For a brief, shining moment, South Africa wasn't black or white. It was simply South African. And it all began with the belief that something as simple as a ball, a field, and a team could bring people together. Mandela once said, "Sport has the power to change the world. It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does." In 1995, he proved those words true. His decision to embrace the Springboks was not just a political act, it was an act of faith in the human spirit. He believed that people could rise above their history, and on that day, they did. The rugby revolution of 1995 remains a lesson for all of us. In a world still divided by race, politics, and ideology, Mandela's example reminds us that bridges can be built in unexpected ways. Unity requires courage not just to lead, but to forgive. And sometimes the path to reconciliation doesn't begin in a parliament or a courtroom, but on a playing field. As we look back, it's clear that the victory was never just about lifting a trophy. It was about lifting a nation. It was about showing that hope can be stronger than hate, and that unity is possible when we are willing to see each other not as enemies, but as teammates. The story of Mandela and the 1995 Rugby World Cup is not just South Africa's story. It's a story for the world. It tells us that leadership is not about holding power. It's about empowering others. It tells us that the smallest gestures, like wearing a jersey or shaking a hand, can carry the weight of history. And it tells us that unity, no matter how fragile, is always worth fighting for. Remember the roar that shook the air when Francois Pienaar lifted that trophy. And remember the man who wore the number 6 jersey not for himself, but for a dream of a better, united nation. Because if rugby could heal South Africa, imagine what we could heal today, only we dared to believe. Call to action. If this story inspired you, don't let it end here. Share it with someone who believes in unity. Leave a comment with your thoughts on how sports or any shared passion can bring people together. And if you want more stories of resilience, leadership, and hope, subscribe to the channel and join us for the next episode. Together, we can keep building bridges, one story at a time.